And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using well, for us, which will be the last of the modes that we're going to learn, which is the Foliage tool. So what this is going to do is basically give us an instant forest. We're going to set up some parameters, we're going to import a couple of meshes, and then from that we'll actually be able to create a very quick forest. Now I'm coming here on purpose to show you, where we had the bush, the grass, and the tree. And if you'll remember, that took quite some time. Well, not that it took a lot of time, but we had to drag one out, we had to drag another one, we had to rotate it. We had to place it, we had to figure out how far apart it was going to be. And if you can imagine, if you have a large area like this and you're going to need to do that quickly, you want a tool that's going to be able to allow you to create the variety that you need in the forest to make it look realistic, while also having enough variance to where it doesn't look repetitive, right? So sort of like what we did with the landscape, where we saw originally that there was a bunch of the same repeating thing, and then we made a little bit of a change to it, and now it looks a lot better, right? So let's go ahead and get started with the foliage tool. So we're going to go into modes, we're going to click foliage, and when we do that, we're going to see the foliage tab appear over here on the left hand side. Basically what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to load this up with different materials that we want to appear in the level. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select the word tree, or type in the word tree, and I am looking for static meshes, and I want to go all the way back to the original folder, or the content folder, so then that way I can see everything that's there. As far as trees are concerned, the same rules would apply that we looked at these. If there's wind running through the trees, try to keep all the trees with the same type of animation maybe. Try to avoid trees like this unless you're going to leave them without the leaves on them. And the reason for that is that 9 times out of 10, these are going to come in with a separate canopy. And if you try to use that separate canopy, let me see if I can actually find one here real quick. One that has a separate canopy. Like here. This is the tree part of it, and this is the branches and the trunk, and then this is the leaves part of it. And so if you were to select both of these, they would not be joined together. And because they're not joined together, this part will look fine. This part will look like it's just floating out there by itself. So try to avoid that. Now, the meshes that I'm getting and the ones that you're seeing are all coming from different types of packs that I've downloaded. You're more than welcome to go to the Unreal Engine, the Epic Games launcher, go into the purchase, or the marketplace, and look for all the ones that you can that are free. And then bring those in, make them part of this project, bring them into this project through the vault on the in Epic Games, and just make them available, and then you'll be able to do a filter like this, and there should be some stuff that shows up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab let's say 2 or 3 of each example. So I am going to grab, let's say, one of these snowy trees, and here's a small looking weird tree, and I am going to actually bring in one of these dead ones, but I'm not going to bring it in with the leaves. I'm just going to leave it out there by itself. Okay, so now we have some trees and some variance in those trees. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go look for bushes. So sometimes you can type this in, and I wouldn't use the plural. I would just use the word bush. I don't have quite a lot of them, so let me grab, let's see, the snowy one. We'll grab this one. This one. We'll grab an empty bush, like it's got no leaves on it, and that should be good. Okay, so now we have a selection of trees, selection of bushes. The next thing that we're going to want to do is look for some grass. So when it comes to grass, you have these individual blades, and then you have like clumps. I want sort of 2, and I also want the one that's got the snow in it as well. So let's grab the snow one. Let's grab one that looks a little bit greener. And let's grab one that's a little bit taller, like this one. And then let's grab another one of these patches. Okay, so now we have quite a few pieces of grass. And the other thing that I like to do to this sometimes is add rocks. So rocks are things that are available. Again, I would avoid using the ones where there's multiple orientations. What I would be looking for would be individual rocks. Like this is a good individual rock. Sorry, I'm just waiting for the shader. Come on, there we go. That's another, let's say that's oh, it says large rock. Let's see if we can find some small rocks. There's another small rock. That one says small rock. And let's grab a snow rock also. Okay. So at this point, what we've done is we've opened up the Foliage tool. We've gone into the content browser, and we've loaded in a bunch of mesh samples. So we have some trees, we have some bushes, we have some rocks, and we have some grass. Right now, all of these are actually selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect all of them except for maybe one of the trees. So then that way I can show you how the brush works as we start bringing stuff in and it starts painting it. And then what we'll do is I'll very quickly go through and add some tolerances to some of the meshes, and then we'll build a very quick, very down and dirty. It's quick. It's a very easy way to create a forest once you've done this. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work on this tree. So I'm going to reactivate that by checking it. Once I've done that, I should get an options menu down here at the bottom that gives me information about that tree. Let me just pull this down so we can see more space. And if you're not seeing it, it's because it's hidden. So you'll have to hit that little tab there to open it up. All right. Sorry, I have to sneeze. Okay, I'm back. All right. So basically what we're looking at here is we've got a couple of things underneath the painting as far as like how it's going to be dealt with the brush. The density means how many units are going to show up within the brush, within the 1K or 1 unit of Unreal. And so since this is a tree, trees don't grow, let's say, necessarily right next to each other. So I'm going to put a distance of, let's say, 10. So there needs to be, well, there's going to be no more than 10 units within this one particular distance. Now, the radius that I want to set up is going to be 300. So for this tree, there can't be another tree that's not going to be any closer than 300 units. And if we wanted to make it more sparse, we'd go 500. So now there has to be 500 units between this tree and the next tree before it comes up. Uniform scaling means that, or the scaling part basically means that, you know, if we look at a forest, not all the trees are exactly the same height. They have a range from little trees to big trees. So what this is going to do is allow us to be able to change the minimum and the maximum height and give it a range. So then that way, as we start using the paint tool, that range will start to manifest itself and create some variance in the meshes that we're looking at. This is a tree, so it's taller. So I'm going to go 0.8 to make it the smallest. So it'll be 80% smaller or 20% smaller than the original tree. And I'm going to go 1.2. So that should make it 1 unit plus an additional 20%. So it'll be anywhere. So there'll be 40% difference between the smallest and the largest tree. From there, the next thing we'll see is placement. The Z-axis means whether it comes in always standing up, or maybe there's a little bit variance left to right as far as how it sits on the z-axis. I'm sorry. So the z-axis offset, excuse me, is how far down into the z-axis you're actually going to have the trees. So some trees, instead of everything being starting at exactly the same, exactly at 0 where the plane ends up, we can say we want this to go a little bit down below the plane. So maybe we'll make this negative point. Let's see, negative point, I don't know, 5. And we don't want it to be any bigger than 0, because if it's bigger than 0, it'll look like it's floating, right? Okay, so alignment as normal means it'll be up and down. Alignment max angle is how much the tree could sway left or right angularly from the bottom. From there, we can have what's called the ground slope angle. So the tree is, as long as so a tree can be generated on an angle that's up to 45 degrees is what we're saying. So from 0 to 45 degrees. 45 degrees means that the tree could literally be growing at a pretty good slope. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that no trees grow off the side of mountains. So I'm going to knock this down to 10%. So at any point, if I have anything more than a 10% slope in the bottom, it's going to not allow the tree to be generated there. And the next thing we have, well, that's we can set up a maximum minimum height. And the other big thing that I want to make sure is checked is that the yaw is turned on. There it is, random yaw. And what that's going to do is it's going to rotate the trees, so then that way they are not all facing in the same direction. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I actually want to come up here across the top. Remember that we're still in modes. We're still in foliage, and we have the paint tool or the paint brush turned on. What we want to do is increase the size of that paintbrush so it takes up more space. And I'm just going to click once. Okay, so we got quite a bit of trees that showed up. All I did was literally click once, left click, and this is what we got. So if I was to push play right now and walk into my forest, obviously there's shaders that are still compiling, but at what we've set up, this is, you know, fairly reasonable. You know, not all the trees look exactly the same, even though it's exactly the same mesh. But since the trees are turned, they're not all facing the same direction, not all the same height. So we get some variance in this, and this actually looks fairly good. So I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to jump back out. It is quite dense. I mean, in there, it was quite a few of them. And you can see that just hitting that once created 113 instances of that tree. So it feels like what I might need to do is maybe make this a little bit less sparse. So let's make it a distance of 0, and we'll keep our density of 1. So only one of these will show up per every 500 units. And to get rid of what we've already done, we're still again in modes in paint. There's another one up there called erase. So when I erase, what it's going to do is it's again only going to erase the ones that are selected. And also notice that the tree over here is the same kind of tree that we're using here, but it's not erasing because this tree was not actually added by the foliage tool. So because it was not added by the foliage tool, it will not be erased by the foliage tool. So if you've got another area that you set up where you hand placed some trees, realize that that's not going to be affected this way. All right, so let's go back to the paint, and I'm going to click once, and we're going to see that we get now, because we said 1 per every 500 unit, we are now getting a little bit more distance between our trees. And if I push play, obviously this is going to feel much more open than it did before. Yeah, definitely way more open. Okay, so basically what you'll do is you'll play around with those settings in the detail panel for each one of these particular objects and or meshes. And what I'll do real quick is I'll do one from each one of the groups. talk about it and as far as why I set it up that way. So the next one's going to be a bush. Bushes generally grow a little bit closer together, so we'll go with 10. We'll say that the radius here will be, let's say, 300, whereas with the trees it was 500. Let's see. Let's keep it uniformed. With this, I don't want quite as much variance. I don't want it to have too much of a variance, so I'm just going to make this a 0.8 to 100. Or to 1, which means it'll be anywhere from 20% less to the regular size. From there, Z offset, I don't really want that much because this is not a large object. It's not going to sit up very high off the ground. Again, with the slope, this is a bush, so maybe it can grow on a slope that's a little bit steeper than maybe what a tree could handle because it's less weight. The bush is not going to be as weighty, so maybe it can hang off to the sides of something if the slope is not more than 30 degrees. From there, the other thing is to make sure that the yaw is turned on, and at this point, that's what I would do with this. Let's see, the grass. The grass is going to be closer together. Obviously, you would expect grass. Now, we also do have a material on the floor that looks like grass and mimics it. So really, the idea of this grass is to have something that looks like a patch of grass, something that sticks up grass-wise that would be a little bit taller than the plane itself. So with this one, let's say we're going to keep it at 20. We don't want to make too many of these. So even though it's grass and you would think, oh, I can make lots of them, no, keep the number kind of small. The radius, let's keep it 100 from each one so we don't get this giant field of grass that's got too many materials or too many meshes. We'll keep it uniformed. We will do, let's say, a 0.9 to, let's say, a 1.1. It's grass, so it shouldn't get that big. Shouldn't be too much variance. Offset, no. The yaw is turned on, so at this point, I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is also do one of the rocks. Rocks, maybe not so many of them. Let's do maybe 2 per every density. Let's keep these at a distance of 3, I don't know, let's say 500. So actually, let's say like 800. You know, there's a rock every once in a while. From there, it's a rock. As long as we keep it uniform, we can stretch them and make them pretty big. So let's say we go everything from, let's say, a 0.5 all the way up to something that's two times the size of the regular rock. From there, the other thing is that with the Z, it's a rock. So rocks go into the dirt, so it can actually be almost all the way into the dirt. So let's say we make this negative 20. So the object can actually be up to 20 degrees into the dirt. And actually, I'm going to make this a negative 30. So then that way we can get that. Now, the other thing, too, with this one is ground slope angle. Rocks can be hanging off of just about anything at 45-degree angle. It still seems plausible that they'd be able to be on the side of a mountain. The rotation, yes. And the angle max rotation, the random pitch angle. So this is something that we can actually do with the rocks that we could not do with the trees, because the trees have to stay perpendicular. They have to grow out of the ground. They can't look like they're growing upside down into the ground. But this is a rock. So to get more variance out of the rock, let's say maybe we rotate it, we give it a max angle rotation of 90 degrees. Remember that if you do anything more than 360, you're just going to rotate back over into the rock. So let me do anywhere from, so maximum angle rotation would be, let's say, like 180. And then we should get some, some rocks that are facing in some different directions. Okay, so I'm going to very quickly go through and set up the rest of these. I'm going to, the only other one that I'll talk about is the dead tree. So this dead tree, the one that comes in with no branches, I really don't want a lot of these. So I'm going to do a 0.5. I'm going to put this into a radius of, let's say, 800. So it shows up very, very seldomly. And I'm actually going to say you know what? I'm going to leave that off. I'm going to leave it uniform. If there are multiple versions of it, let's say we go from a 0.7 all the way up to a 1.1. We don't want any angular offset or angle offset. The only thing we do want it is to not grow off of the side of a mountain or a big hill. Okay, so the video's already gone over the 20-minute mark, so I'm going to cut it here. We've loaded all the presets that we need. I'm going to go through and set up the variables for the other ones, and then we're going to come back in another video and show you how to actually apply this to the surface and how to make it look realistic. So I hope you enjoyed the video and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.